Hello and welcome to The Gist. I'm your host, Chris Vetrano, here every week to break down all the things that are happening in pop culture and interviewing the people that make it pop. On today's show, we are welcoming a true hit maker. Her brand of pop music masterpiece is unmatched in the music game today. She constantly delivers bop after bop, which is why she landed on the top of my Spotify Unwrapped last year, being the most listened to artist to infiltrate my eardrums in 2023. And now she's back with her brand new mini album titled Elle, featuring instant classics like Strawberry Dream and Heartbreak in the Making. Here to talk all about it and so much more, please give it up for my guest, Dagny.
Hi. Well, that was a nice introduction.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
You were my most listened to artist last year.
Oh,
We
nice.
could not get enough of your debut album and all of the additional music and singles that you've delivered over the years. We're big fans in my house. My husband actually is probably your super fan.
Oh, that's so nice.
I
Say hello
we
to me then.
I know he actually doesn't know that I'm interviewing you today because he admittedly doesn't listen to the podcast a lot because he's not much of a podcast guy, and he was like, is it weird that I don't listen? And I was like, it's fine. But I know that this is going to be the first episode that he's going to listen to.
Maybe we can get him into it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But no, my husband, Joe, like I said, such a huge fan. We often fight over who discovered you first. I introduced him, but he takes a minute sometimes to remember. And then suddenly he's like, Dagny, have you heard? Amazing. And so the amount of times that I hear in our house, Alexa, play Dagny, is unmatched. So,
and what was the first song that you discovered, or how?
Well, Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda was I think the first one that I think was on some playlist that I found, and I just became obsessed. And then somebody was just so infectious, and then once you start to see the visuals, your videos are so good. And yeah, we're such big fans, and so it's such a thrill to have you on the show today.
It's so nice to be here as well and to chat with you.
Yeah, I do want to talk about your new mini album, Elle, but before we do, I kind of want to set the stage for the listeners because you, like I said, you are such a pop music mastermind. And I want to know, where did this inspiration and where did your love of pop music come from?
I think that's a really good question because I grew up in a family that's very musical, and my parents do Brazilian music and jazz, which, actually growing up, we didn't really have a lot of pop music or folk music or rock music or anything like that in the household. And so I feel like, which is something I've noticed in the more recent years, that a lot of the kind of references and the classics that everyone knows and everyone can sing along to, and have you heard the catalog of this artist or this artist? I kind of missed out on a lot of that. So maybe that's why, when Spice Girls hit in the 90s, that was kind of my first discovery of pop, and I just thought it was so amazing, and really became a super fan. I was really a big fan. And actually, I thought about it a little bit, because a lot of the pop music that they did, it wasn't it was pop music, but it wasn't straightforward always. It wasn't super simple. They kind of play with rhythms, they're kind of it was very fun and not super straightforward. And so maybe there was some kind of link there between the Brazilian music that we listened to in the car, and kind of that was a nice transition into pop. I don't know, but I just fell in love with Spice Girls, and I think that was kind of the first meeting I had with pop music, and I was just instantly hooked with the hookiness of it, and the fun and playfulness, and I feel like pop music kind of can touch on so many emotions, and it's so simple in some ways, and also therefore actually really complicated sometimes, especially in the writing process. But I think that was kind of what got me into pop. Begin with Spice Girls.
That's amazing. oftentimes like people ask me, because I have worked in the music industry and I love pop culture, all things pop culture, and people ask a lot like, where did that start? And for me, it was also the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
I became obsessed with the fact that they were kind of this manufactured group that like came together, and then what they achieved was just so phenomenal. And the music itself, I mean, they really technically only have 2 albums, but
Yeah.
I know they have a third one. But just as the 5-piece, the 2 albums, it's like there's so many songs that to me are just like classic pop. Like it's kind of
Oh,
like ABBA. You
totally.
could just put it on whenever, and it still
Yeah.
feels timeless.
And I think it's like what was so unique with them as well was that like the different characters, like the
Mm-hmm.
different, I think there was, we were, with all my girlfriends like growing up, we all were like, I'm Mel B, or like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm Emma. Like
Yeah.
you kind of relate, you could relate to one of them, and like they had so like specific traits and like characters, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think within it as well, it created a lot of community. Like we would meet up just to kind of do the dance to Spice Girls, or
Yeah.
dress up as Spice Girls or whatever. So we had so much fun with it, like beyond just like enjoying listening to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Spice Girl did you most relate to?
I was Mel B.
Always Mel B. Scary Spice.
My sister had like long blonde hair, so she was Emma, baby
Okay.
Spice.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know why, but there was always this thing that like uh who's gonna be Victoria? Like for
Mm.
some reason, like we always had the hardest time finding a Victoria for the group, but
Yeah. Well,
I
she
think they're
was
all
my favorite, so I'll just be your honorary Victoria.
yeah, that's perfect. There you go.
Yeah,
Mm,
I loved her. It's so funny because, now she doesn't really do music, and she's one of the most famous people in the world for
yeah,
fashion. And
yeah.
I mean, and all of them still look amazing. They still are like so relevant.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're just true pop stars. So that's an amazing kind of reference for you to kind of have gotten this initial inspiration, which makes a lot of sense when you listen to your music too. Like
Yeah,
it
cool.
feels the very similar in that same way that you kind of described their music. It's like it's timeless. It kind of weaves itself in and out of a lot of different sounds and
Mm,
feelings and emotions, and
mm.
you deliver kind of all of those things on music, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think like I think it's very nice that you say that, and I've thought a lot about it in the recent years, like how music can have so many like functions in a way. Like you can, for example, you can be feeling sad and you can put on a song that really gets you in a different mood, or something that picks you up, or you can
Hmm.
listen to music when you're feeling sad and you just want to listen to something sad because you just want to be in the sadness or whatever and feel like someone else gets what you feel. Or you can play music to set the mood for whatever situation you're in. I mean, there's so many ways, and I think that maybe in a similar way that Spice Girls did for me, I feel like I make a lot of music that's like based around kind of some kind of positivity, or like energy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people use my music for like it's like a pick me up.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that that was like a really nice, if that's what my music does for people, then I think that's a nice thing, because we all need a pick me up occasionally. And I
Absolutely.
think for me, Spice Girls was very much that. It was just something that really gave me so much energy and just joy.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too because, I feel like I really first discovered you in the pandemic
Mm,
and really discovered your music. And it was something that, me and my husband and our friends now, because we're constantly, playing you, it it is kind of that the songs you go to for the fun night, or, we
mm,
just are celebrating Pride Month in the US, and
mm.
like we have to have Dagny on all the playlists. So it's a pick me up. So I think like if that's what you're trying to achieve, you're achieving it.
Hey.
So good work there. And I know that like you also seem to be really influenced by pop culture in a lot of ways. I know we had talked about coulda, woulda, shoulda, that
Mm,
it was inspired by a episode of Sex and the City, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And you also have done have songs inspired by Casablanca, and in Strawberry Dream you make reference to Bridget Jones. And
Mm,
so you seem to be really, inspired by these pop culture moments that are kind of, I think, giving you some kind of inspiration for lyrics or whatever. Do you feel like drawn to that when you go into the writing process?
Yeah, I think that I think that's I realized at one point that I'm a songwriter and I love writing, and um I'm not like a songwriter that has to, like, everyday life. It's like something happens, I'm like, oh my God, I have to go and write about it. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not like super. It's not like in that way. And
Right.
I think that, as a person, I'm pretty. I'm not like very heavily emotionally driven. I think,
Hmm.
of course, I have emotions, and I think about a lot of things, but like I don't. I think also in my work, I have to sometimes. I can't always just react based on
Hmm.
my emotions. And I think that as a songwriter, I've sometimes thought that maybe I was a bit. Maybe I would have benefited from being a bit more dramatic or emotional, because, like, I've always thought maybe that would help the songwriting. And for some years, like early on, I would kind of stress about that, like, oh my God, maybe I don't have enough drama in my life. What am I going to write about? What am I going to like? What am I going to talk about in my songs?
Yeah.
And then I realized that, like, songwriting isn't just about, like, isn't it's there's so many ways of writing music. You can write,
Hmm.
write based on something you maybe think about, maybe it hasn't happened in your life, but maybe you're like fantasizing about it, or maybe you've imagined certain situations or scenarios, and you let that kind of play out in your mind, and that's a form of creativity. And sometimes, you will overhear a conversation on the bus, and sometimes you will maybe just see how, you will observe a relationship of someone close to you. Maybe I can write about something that's like happened 10 years ago, but it's
Hmm.
something that I still think about, or I can remember the feeling very well.
Right.
As long as I can relate to a feeling, as long as I can remember a feeling, or it gives me some kind of feeling, then I can write about it. And I think that for me, that was like, it really opened up a world of a lot of exciting things when I realized that you can do that. And in the same way, you can watch an episode of something, or you can listen to read a book, and and
Hmm.
and you can find a lot of inspiration in that. And I think that after I realized that that's okay, and I don't have to live a super dramatic, be in a super dramatic relationship or something to have
Yeah.
something to write about. So that's become a lot, like, there's a lot less pressure on that. But I do still find that, as I said, like, once I maybe get inspired by something, I still have to relate it, as I said,
Hmm.
to something that I can recognize, because
Yeah.
it would be very difficult for me to try and portray a feeling or talk about a feeling, or try and if I can't recognize it in
Right.
myself.
If you haven't
Yeah.
experienced it in some way, whether it's
Yeah.
watching it and relating or otherwise. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Obviously you're an incredible performer, but also we've talked a lot about the songwriting. You became a co-writer on Katy
Mm.
Perry's Never Really Over
Mm.
after she, like, let's use air quotes and say after she covered your song Love You Like That. I'm curious as to, like, what was that experience like for you? And did you take it as like a compliment, or, did you kind of feel used as an up and coming artist?
I gotten that question a lot, and I think that I really took it as a compliment, actually.
Hmm.
When it first happened, and we got some emails saying, "Okay, Katy Perry's releasing a song. It's kind of inspired by Love You Like That." My first thought was just like, "There's no way. Like, that's never gonna happen. Like, that's never gonna happen. Okay, just keep calm, everybody, until we actually know for sure." At that point, I've been touring with Love You Like That for, I think, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so even though that song, is forever special to me, it also felt like, oh, it gets to take on a new
New
life, a new
life.
direction. And I think that, again, back to what you said earlier about inspiration, I think that, we get inspired from so many things around us, including music. I never go into a writing session like intentionally trying to do something that sounds like something else, or like,
Hmm.
let's try and make a song like that. Like, I don't do that. But sometimes you find that there's something has snuck in. And I
Right.
think that what was the most important thing about, like, the how it happened with Never Really Over was just that they very early on came to us and just kind of gave credit where credit was due. And I think that that's something for everyone who's in creative to like. It's good. It's, that's how it should be. If you take inspiration, or if you find that you made something that sounds similar to something else, then just be open about it and just say that that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And they did that, and therefore it felt like we got to be part of the journey rather than just standing on the sideline and kind of watching it unfold.
And did that all happen before the song came out? Like, did you know that was happening before she released it, or okay, so it wasn't
Yeah.
after the fact?
No, I think they reached out in like January or something, and then the song came out in May. And
Oh,
my
okay.
first reaction was, because it's like I got this little snippet of the song, and like one of those snippets that only last for like a few hours.
Right.
And, wow, you have to go listen to it now. And I was out and about, I don't know if we were on tour or whatever we were. And so I could only hear it, putting my phone up to my ear.
Yeah.
And the song was playing, and my thought was just like, wait, this doesn't sound anything like Love You Like That. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna get credit for something that is not like, it doesn't even sound like my song. But then when the song came out, I could hear it, and
Yeah, of
and
course.
yeah, I think when it all comes down to it, I thought it was a really fun thing to get to be part of.
Yeah. I mean, but they're both great songs, but I think Love You Like That is a very special song. It is one of our favorites. And so, I would probably prefer yours. And, but I love the idea that an artist like Katy Perry also did that, because you hear about all these like lawsuits that are happening, and somebody
Yeah,
says like this person, and then I know Ed Sheeran has been like in the news a lot around it, and it almost takes out the fun, I think. I don't
I
write
agree.
songs, but I feel like for songwriters,
Yeah.
it is easier to just say like, let's address this early and just say it, rather than like have to fight it out, because then it kind of takes the charm out of what the song was supposed to be.
I completely agree. And I also think that, I mean, I have experience going into sessions with other songwriters, and, there's been I've heard this song. Should we try and make something like it? And it's like, let's see how close we could get and how much we can just
Mm,
like change a little bit to get away with it. And,
mm,
and I've never, for me, that's like, that doesn't feel very creative. Like
yeah.
you know, I'd rather, I'd rather sit an extra however many hours I need to sit there and bang my head against the wall, or twin my thumbs
Hmm.
before we come up with something. And
Yeah.
then, we come up with it, and suddenly there's a song there, and you don't really know exactly where it came from, but suddenly it's there. I'd much rather go the hard
Yeah.
way and feel like it's something unique than just trying to just copy something because you've seen that it worked before.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I agree. Just be open about it, and then that's kind of a, a better, a
Yeah.
nicer approach, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I know that you've, done a lot of collaborating as well. With Astrid S,
Mm,
Pretty is an incredible song.
thank you.
We love that one. And you've done Lonely Together with
Thank
Kygo.
you. Yeah.
And then more recently, Something Beautiful with Jung, which I, by the way, love. I have to note, I love the video with the
Hey.
90210 references. That is probably one of my other sort of pop culture influences as a kid coming up. Like, I loved 90210, and so when I saw the
Yeah.
video, it's so funny, but also like gives me such nostalgia. But are there other artists that you would love to either write for or collaborate with that you haven't yet had an opportunity?
Oh, there's probably tons, but my go-to is and will probably forever be Robin. Do you know
Mm,
Robin?
of
Oh
course.
my
Yeah.
God, I'm
Yeah.
obsessed.
Yeah.
And I just think she's incredible. I love her voice. I love her melodies. I love her whole like just everything. I just think she's so cool. Yeah.
That would be a massive pop
Oh,
explosion, the two of you together.
yeah. I would probably come into the room and completely choke because I wouldn't get a word out. But no, she's inspired me for a long time,
Yeah.
and I would love. actually horrible. Like I'm so bad with setting up, like dreams or like thinking ahead. I'm very much like in the moment kind of
Hmm.
girl.
Yeah.
But she is someone that, I've always thought if there's ever a chance to just do some writing or do a song or something, then
Yeah.
I wouldn't even
Yeah,
blink.
I mean, and speaking of Robin, Max Martin kind of put Robin's sound together
Mm,
initially in her career.
mm,
I feel like Max Martin would be somebody that, like, from a songwriting perspective, like you
mm,
guys would complement each other really well. He obviously has been influential in so many of the major pop stars' careers, and
mm.
seems like it would be a good fit.
There's
Uh,
clearly something in the water over there in Sweden.
I know, right? Yes. I mean, really, I think, like, we often go to a lot of Swedish pop music in Norway, and
Mm,
I think, like, there is something that, and I don't know what it is. Maybe you understand it
mm,
better. Is like, why is it that we're getting these like incredible sort of like pop artists that are coming,
mm.
you know, out of these other countries, but they all seem to be like fairly influenced by like US pop culture and things
Yeah.
in this way. And I feel like that's something that's missing in the US. A lot of our pop stars don't deliver the same kind of like sounds and things that you guys do.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I've also thought about that a little bit, like because people, talk about the Scandi pop and the Scandi sound,
Hmm.
and I've been trying to think, what is it? Because as you say, like we grew up with, the most of the TV shows we watched and the movies we watched and the music we listened to was from the US, and we had like very heavily influenced by like, you know, yeah, from the uh, pop culture and from the US.
Hmm.
But I think that like if there's anything that I could try and pinpoint that maybe creates a little bit of that sound that people associate with like Scandi pop, it's that mix of the uplifting, but also the
Hmm.
like melancholia, like the
Hmm. Yeah.
sadness. And I
Yeah.
think that Robin is a great example of that, with someone who's managed to they talk about the cry dance,
Hmm.
crying while you're dancing
Yeah.
on the dance floor, and I think that she does it so well, and it gives the that contrast. I think gives the music such like depth, and
Hmm.
you like. For me, I find it more easy to kind of emotionally connect with it in a way, and it
Yeah.
touches on so many different emotions at the same time. So, if anything, maybe that's it, or maybe it's just the fact that we're not, we might be good in English, but we're obviously like not, English isn't our first language. So
Right.
we have to make up for it with like hooky melodies so people
Yeah.
don't notice that.
Yeah.
Don't always know.
But and then I think my husband and I have actually talked about this too, because like I said, we love this kind of like pop music, is that pop music doesn't always have to necessarily like make sense, right? It
No.
doesn't have to be like a country song, which is like a
Mm,
storytelling, or like you guys tell stories still in your songs,
mm,
but even if it's not like the perfect, grammatical way of saying
mm,
something in a chorus, if it rhymes or if it sounds right and
mm.
it gets the point across, and it ends up being like anthemic, or
Yeah.
it ends up being like the right thing. And so I feel like maybe that's something, is like in the US people get too tied on like, does this sentence make sense
Mm.
in a chorus?
Yeah, that's a good. I think that's a interesting. I think that's an interesting thought, and I think, as you say, like, it's not always necessarily about telling the story word for word, but it's like, I mean, with music, there can be so much emotion just in the production or
Yeah.
the instrumentation, and maybe like we've tried to make that more of our thing because
Hmm.
like we're not maybe as I'm talking broad here, like
Right.
generalizing heavily, but like
Yeah.
maybe we're not as like steady on the kind of, yeah, the grammar and the English in itself. And I think Max Martin, is always, as far as I've understood, he's always made it a point out of like it's equally important how the words sound
Pronounced. Yeah.
and it's pronounced rather
Hmm.
than just the meaning of them.
Yeah.
And as you can see with him having now gone for I don't know how many decades, having made hit songs over so many generations and through so many different genres, he obviously is like, yeah, there's just the hookiness and the vibe and the
Yeah.
music itself is like it gets people.
Yeah.
Even though it's not perfect,
Yeah.
it does something.
Yeah. It's
Mm.
amazing. And speaking of amazing, let's talk about Elle, because this is your new, what you're calling your mini album, the
Mm.
first of 3 that are
Mm.
coming. So, tell me, we're on the gist. So give me the gist, or what would be your kind of one sort of liner on Elle? How would you tell me about Elle?
Oh, that is so difficult because, like, if you only knew how much time I use on trying to like hone it down to one lines. You know what? It's always a tricky thing, that, because you've always just spent so much time on the music, and there's so many, for me, there's so many like nuances in
Mhm.
the songs and where they come from, and the story behind them and the process of getting there. Actually, it's not that many weeks ago I sat and I was trying to like find like very simple way of explaining it.
Yeah.
And I was scratching my head. Yeah, yeah. But I would say that it's an album that is, I think, what it's very much in, for anyone who knows my music. It is still very much in the Dagny landscape.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe slightly more organic than Strangers Lovers, but I think with this album, what ties it together is just the slight emotional chaos in a way. It's not
Mm.
chaos. There's not, now I'm already not making it short, but I think,
Okay.
like, for example, with Strangers Lovers, that was a more conceptual album telling the journey from falling in love with someone to after it's over.
Mhm.
And for me, it was very, very clear what the album was about and who it was about, and it was telling a very specific story. In for me, but with Elle, it is slightly more all over the show, like emotionally all over the show a little bit.
Yeah.
I think at the same time that also kind of explains a little bit of how, like, what kind of mindset I've been in for the last few years. In a way, it does sum up a very specific time, I guess, in my life. But I always say that Elle is like someone uh, with someone who's got their heart on their sleeve,
Mhm.
and it's just not like kind of still figuring it out,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah. And Elle is French for her.
yeah.
And did you want that to be, I wondered if it was like her being you, or was Elle sort of a character for you, and of
Mm.
of this maybe woman Elle?
Yeah, that's a good. I think that's a good question, and I guess how much time do you have? I'll try and keep it short, but I think so. When I just after I did my first album,
Mhm.
Strangers Lovers, I kind of dived straight into writing again only a week after,
Oh.
and I was having a little bit of a hard time finding what inspired me in a new way. Like, I
Hmm.
felt like I was writing a lot of songs, but they all sounded just like the first album. So I
Mhm.
had to kind of try and find new ways of feeling inspired in new ways. And so I was writing a lot of different kind of music. And then after a few years, I realized that, I really want to do an album, but I have so much music that kind of leans slightly different directions.
Mhm.
And so a way for me to kind of structure, I guess, myself and my music, and still feeling like I didn't have to like creatively put a lid on myself.
Right.
I came up with this idea of maybe I should make 3 mini albums instead of just thinking of this journey as just a one album process.
Right.
And then I came up with these female characters after having been in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Because they could never pronounce my name, like get my name right on the Starbucks. So I
Oh.
came up with this like alter ego that I just gave them my like a different name
Right.
that was kind of hooky, and I started thinking of this person as like my alter ego and my kind of spy, just like as a kind of a character. And then that sparked the idea of having like a female name for each of the mini albums,
Oh,
and
okay.
letting each character be like a more extreme version of different sides of myself, I guess.
Hmm.
Sounds
I
very
love
complicated. And with Elle, I think, her being the kind of first one out, I didn't want to find a name that was like warrior woman or,
Right.
I didn't want to, I felt like this is the fundament, and there's things that are going to grow from this. And so it felt like nice to have a name that was just simple and like a good foundation of further growth in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
So if Elle is some kind of version of you, but still a character, how
Mm.
closely aligned do you feel to Elle? Do
I
you
would
think
say
that
that.
she's like, what percentage of you is Elle?
That's a good question. I would say that all the music that I ever release, I think is like comes from somewhere, has to be related to me in some ways.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that like saying that I'm someone who wears my heart on my sleeve is maybe pushing it a little bit,
Mm,
because like I do think that like I'm not I'm not someone who just, it takes a bit of time for me to maybe open up about stuff that's very personal. And sometimes, I'll be feeling something, but I'm not necessarily someone who shows it immediately. So in that sense, having kind of built this album around someone who is very high and low and just jumps into things head
mhm,
first, and someone who cries behind big Ray Bans, and someone who's very like emotional like that, like
mhm.
I guess that's not really necessarily how I am, but I do find that like all the songs represent something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And so maybe I'm more dramatic and emotional than I think I am, just
Yeah.
on the inside.
Yeah, maybe you're finding yourself through Elle in
Yeah.
this creation process. I also have to say, In My Bones is so good. I mean, it truly is like this anthem. And well, like when it starts, like I don't expect it. It's at the end of the album,
Mm,
and it comes after Close, and it's like, okay, maybe we're gonna have like a little softer landing at the end of the album,
mm.
and it just like it goes there, and it's so hooky, and I like can't get it out of my head, and so I love it so much. I love so many of all of the songs on it,
Thank you.
really. But I mean, I feel like we heard a lot of them. You gave us a lot of them as singles, and so I
Mm.
got a lot of time with them. And then when the album came out, it was like, oh my gosh, In My Bones is so good. It's like it's definitely like one of my favorites of yours now.
Thank you. That's actually one of my personal favorites as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's amazing. So, what is sort of the game plan, if you will? Do you have a plan? Do you already have the other two projects like in the can, they're done, or you're going to be working on them now to deliver over, a certain amount of time?
I mean, I when I started like this process in my head of like doing the mini albums, I had a very clear like,
Okay.
this is going to be the first, this is the second, this is the third, and here are the songs that I'm thinking for each. But then, as always, you dive into an album process, and you're like, yeah, this is it. It takes you on a journey. It's
Yeah.
always takes longer than you expect, and it's always so much stuff that happens from when you start it to when you finish it. And so it's definitely I feel like I have a clear idea in my head, but I've decided that I'm going to spend the autumn kind of trying to flesh it out and figure out exactly, um, how it's going to be. But the idea is that it's not going to be another 4 years before like
Okay.
the first and the second album.
Okay.
Uh, that was kind of also part of wanting to do mini albums. It's just that I love touring and I love
Hmm.
playing live,
Yeah.
and so we play a lot, and that
Yes.
obviously makes it. Sometimes I should probably like uh, spend a bit more time just being in the studio. So this autumn, I've decided, I'm gonna set aside some time to be in the studio and just focus on that.
Yeah, well, and I imagine too that, I mean, you mentioned like coming off of the last record, you were already writing a week later. So I
Mm.
imagine that you have to get this sort of project out now that you've committed to these three albums, because
Mm.
otherwise you're going to start writing again, and then you're
Yeah.
going to have way too much music. I mean, which is never a bad thing for us, but you just got to make sure you can deliver it all to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I should probably um, be realistic about, I feel like whenever I do an album, it's such a nice way of connecting with the people that listen to music and chat with them and like go through the process and stuff. And I have to say, like, the music takes the time it takes. I always think
Hmm.
that like you don't want to release something unless you feel sure about it. But I definitely like I felt like 4 years between the first and the second one. I was really itching after getting a record out
Yeah.
by the end of the Elle process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were too. We were ready. I mean, you, like I said, you gave us some singles, and we had some of those collaborations and things. But we were ready. So we're excited to be kicking off this.
Yeah, part
Um,
2.
so you mentioned the touring, and you have toured with, I mean, literally some of the biggest names in all of music: Elton John, Bryan Adams, Sting. I
Mm,
mean, I can't even imagine, sharing the same stage with some of those artists.
mm,
Um, I know that you're touring now.
mm.
I would love to know when we're going to get you in the US again.
Gosh, I would be back tomorrow if I could. Honestly, that's it's a big goal that I have
Yeah.
to get back to the US. We went on a support tour with do you know a band called Laney?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, we went on tour with them in the US in 2017. Actually, around the time Love You Like That came out.
Yeah.
And we were just touring everywhere. I think I can't remember how many we were. It was for a few months, 2 or 3 months, and we were just bussing around the US. It's one of my most fond memories, I think, of anything I've ever done. I had the best time, and we did another tour then on the back of that in 2018, and that was the last time I was on tour in the US.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
this is something we talk about regularly, me and my drummer and my management. When can we go on tour in the US again?
Yeah. Well,
So hopefully sooner rather than later, if it's up to me. Yeah.
yes. And when you do, because I'm gonna hold you to it that we're gonna see you in the US soon. You have to come through Nashville,
Oh, definitely.
Music City. We need you here. We play, like I said, we play you for all our friends. We talk about you constantly. So I know that we will have people at that show, and
Let's
they
do
will.
it.
We got to make it happen, because we're dying to see the live show live.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to come, and I do think that like live, it's just something else. It's one thing on the record, but I do think that there's like live is something that we've always really loved, and we
Yeah.
spend a lot of time, and I think that you know the recording and the live is two different things, but yeah, it adds something else live.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I always say that if it was up to me, I'd be touring 51 out of 52 weeks of the year. I could
Wow.
just go home for Christmas and then go back out again. So
Well, maybe do try that first before you commit to it, because you
yeah.
probably want a little bit more time off. But
I
that's
regret saying that.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, I mean, I know that, like I said, you've been touring, and you have Elle now out. You've given it. We have two more mini albums, and anything else that you've got coming up. I know that you have had the acting bug at one point. Are you thinking that you may do any more acting? Is there anything else that you've got coming up that's exciting for the rest of the year?
I am actually doing something exciting this autumn. It's classic. I'm not allowed to
You
say
can't
anything
share
about.
yet.
No, I can't share yet. But I promise you'll be the first one I drop a note when I'm allowed to say. But it's for me, it's always been very much focusing on writing and performing. I haven't really had that. I haven't really had that kind of need to wanting to do something else, create a clothing brand or makeup
Right.
brand or go act or I felt like it's always been enough
Hmm.
just doing the music and focusing on that.
Yeah.
Um and so that is going to continue to be my main thing, and I still feel like I have so much left in me, before I ever get to the point where um, I would even consider doing something else. But at the same time, I think it's also like the older I get, the more I feel like that need of pushing myself a little bit outside of the comfort zone
Yeah.
occasionally,
Yeah.
and not get too like settled, not get too comfortable. Still have that like that I had 15 years ago, 10 years ago when we were just starting out, like just jump in head first and you don't know if you're going to land on your face or your feet or whatever, but you go for it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to like um, put a bit more of that in recently.
Yeah,
And
that's
I would
amazing.
love to just go on a holiday by myself, even though I think it sounds scary, but I should just do it, you know. And so this autumn, I am doing something that I'm a little bit scared of, but I'm also very excited to try something new.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to find out what that is. And I'm going to manifest it now. I think that rumors have been swirling for years, but it seems like we're getting closer. A Spice Girls reunion tour may
Oh my
be in the
gosh.
works. And I feel like Dagny as support would be the perfect combination. Let's make it happen.
We should totally put that out into the universe.
Let's do it. I would love
Let's
to
do
see
it.
that.
Wouldn't that be a dream? Huh?
I mean, full circle moment for you, truly.
Yeah,
That would
for
be.
sure.
Well, you're such a joy. You're such a pleasure to chat with, and like
Likewise.
I said, I'm such a big fan of everything that you give us and music, and especially in this time. In the U.S., we're in a crazy time in the U.S., and there's a lot of not so much joy, and so it's great to have your music to kind of turn to in that, and like I said, I just appreciate that you are continuing to do it, and you have plans to just stick with it because you have a lot more to give. And I'm so grateful that you spent the time with me today to chat all about Elle and all of the past and future music that you're going to give us.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure talking to you too, and it's really lovely. And I can't wait until I come to Nashville and we can sing together loud in a room.
Yes, I mean, I do it every Saturday night in our kitchens.
Oh, there you go.
we will make it happen. Well, like I said, thank you so much, and I hope that everyone that's listening, if you don't know Dagny, where have you been? But Elle is available now, and there's so much more music to come. So go stream it, and yeah, just continue to support. Oh, before you go, where can people find you on socials?
On Instagram at Dagny Music.
Perfect.
At Spotify, Dagny. Yeah, just Dagny, pretty much.
Yeah. Look up Dagny and you'll find her. The beautiful blonde, you will know that that's her, and then the voice of an angel. So, all of the things. Again, Dagny, thanks so much for being here. For all of you listening, thank you so much for listening. It's Chris Vetrano signing off, but don't forget and rate and subscribe so that you never miss another episode of The Gist. And you can follow me at CM Vetrano on all the platforms. And until next week, bye.